like giving food to the hungry, giving hope to the needy, giving life to a baby, giving care for free, 'cause there's freedom around us. We have everything we need, and I will care for you, 'cause you care for me. And we all have opinions, and some of them get through, but there's better people with more good to do, good to do.
So welcome to episode 3 of our YouTube series. This one I've dedicated to my journey into the pro-life movement and how that developed. It is a really big topic. There is a lot to consider and cover, so that's why it's just one topic, this video. When I look back, I think my pro-life journey probably started when I was about 13, when my dad just gave me a hug and said, if I should ever get pregnant, not to be afraid to come home and tell them that they would support me with the baby. I was a long way from getting pregnant when I was that age, but I was very moved, and I knew that my father would love his grandchildren no matter how they were conceived, and what sort of state I was in, that he was there for me. I think fathers are really important. Having that support is enormously important. So I'd encourage dads to have that conversation with their daughters, when they're younger, even though it seems a bit of it did seem out of the blue. It did seem like a strange thing to do, and to have, him say something like that. But I was touched, so it was fine. So I was very pro-life for any children I might have, but I wasn't necessarily pro-life for any other women's babies. When I thought about it as I grew older, I just felt like that was a personal issue between a woman and a doctor to make up her mind about that. I wasn't, I was happy to sort of leave it to that sphere, the private sphere. So it wasn't really until I got pregnant that I started revisiting the issue. And I thought, okay, the Catholic worker in Brisbane had traditionally been pro-life and anti-war, being consistent against violence. And I thought, okay, I'll just see what I think about abortion while I'm pregnant. And the first thing I thought was, I don't necessarily feel like there's anyone there, but I'm really sick and feeling very vulnerable. And I realised that women were probably making these decisions in a very vulnerable state. I wanted to feel like I was looked after, which is a bit of a shock to me and my husband. I'd been very independent before that, but I started to feel like, where are you, and are you going to look after me? All of that got better once the baby was born, but it was a bit of a surprise to me. And then as the baby grew bigger, she started moving. I started feeling her moving, and that was a bit of a dawning awareness to me, because I couldn't stop her moving so that I could sleep, and I couldn't start her moving so her dad could feel her. And I thought, she wasn't me. She wasn't me. She was somebody else. And that meant she had her own human rights. She could have been a boy. She could have had a different blood group to me. She had her own set of genes. It was just a real awakening that, the child in the womb is not their mother. And so that brought me more into the pro-life movement, and we contacted, Jim and I had time away in this time as well. We had 4 months away from the Catholic worker to just have some time alone with each other, because once you have children, no time together alone. And we had never been alone as a couple. We'd always lived in community. So this was a chance to sort of have some time just with the two of us before we were a bigger family. So in that time, we were thinking about, okay, what we were going to devote our energies to, and both of us felt more attracted to the pro-life cause. So we have not left that, and I have found it very helpful as a movement as I've had more children and been raising them, because the pro-life movement it cares about children, of course, and it was cutting edge with information about children and childhood and things that could damage children. And they were talking about the internet addiction in the 90s, way before, 20 years before other people were ringing alarm bells about it. So I'm very, very grateful that was, as well as the anti-war movement, that I had the pro-life movement in my life as I was raising children. But also, I guess, being in the Catholic worker, having lots of really good conversations with people. I got to know a lot of women who had abortions, and at one stage I realised I probably had 30 friends who'd had abortions, and only a couple of them had not been sexually abused as children. And that seemed strange to me, that there was such a preponderance of these two things in the circles that I mixed in anyway. And so I actually asked one of my friends, I said to her, you're one of the few women I know who've had an abortion, but weren't sexually abused. And then I was the first person she told that she had been, by her father. So I just thought there's something going on here. And I started also considering, and I'd always felt this way, that guilt is not something that in anything that we do, that belongs just to the person. I could see biblically and theologically that communal guilt was something that God talked about. And Jesus talked about judging between the nations in Matthew 25. And being yeast in the dough. So we aren't people sort of separate, we're people in and involved, and we're meant to be agents for, the rising of the communities that we live in, for their, uplifting, like yeast in the dough. And so I started thinking, well, we're all guilty of what's happening in this abortion situation. I knew a lot about what happens and how babies die in abortions, and you wouldn't wish that on any living being, let alone your own child. And I thought, women are not being informed, and they're not being warned that it's their own child that's going to be killed inside their bodies. So I started a group called Feminist for Life. We joined the Feminist for Life movement, which gave us a lot of really good information to share with women who were concerned about women's rights. So that was a really great movement to be involved with. And I actually think that when we are talking about helping the poor, the absolute poorest people in Australia are definitely unborn children, because we don't have the right to kill anybody except them. And that makes them incredibly abandoned by us, and I felt very responsible, I guess, for what was happening to them and their mothers and our society. We do not know the extent of the damage that this is causing on us. We just don't know. But it must be enormous, because it's so horrendous a thing for a woman to go through. So I also realised that motherhood was teaching me things. And one of the things it was teaching me was that whatever my children went through, I experienced as well, in a way that their father didn't really, that I felt for them. Not that he wasn't understanding, but I would experience what they experienced, which wasn't always helpful. And I thought, well, the mother-child bond goes very deep, and it shouldn't be messed with in this direct way. And I started seeing abortion as actually an attack on women and on womanhood and on a woman's feminine integrity, is how I would put it. So I had also started by this stage, because I'd been involved in direct action against war, I started being involved at abortion clinics in going in, talking to women in the waiting rooms, getting arrested, sitting in front of the door, talking to staff. This was just one of the ways in which my pro-life journey was panning out. I did lots of other things. I lobbied politicians, I wrote letters, we had marches, rallies. There was a lot of different ways, but this was one way, of course, that impacted a lot more on me and my family and my community, to do this, to get arrested. And I started to realise, I wasn't sure that the amount of impact it was going to have on my life was justified, I suppose. And also because it got criticised so heavily by people on the left. And people were so upset with me for doing this sort of actions. So you do have to examine yourself a lot when you have a lot of criticism as to why you were doing these things. And one of the things that I came to realise and sense in myself was what I was doing in these actions was accompanying the women in a way that I couldn't by any other means, which meant that what I was asking them to sacrifice in order to save their children was what I was also sacrificing alongside them. So my time, my energy, my financial abilities, my children's lives, often a baby's going to really impact other children in the family. My extended family were shocked and horrified and upset with me. My status as someone who was arrested, criminalised, fingerprinted, photographed, jailed, gone to court, trying to defend my actions. So, my status, all of these things are things that women are possibly going to have to sacrifice in order to save their babies. And so I was accompanying them in a way that was more self-sacrificial, I guess. And because I had to try and make sense of doing this, I wasn't doing it lightly. I had to, because it cost me. I had to know that what I was doing was absolutely where God wanted me, and that in some way it was the most important thing to do. Because if it wasn't, I'll do the thing that's most important. I don't really want to go through all of that. But I had, we used to do a fast and vigil, and we still do, even though it's illegal now, outside an abortion clinic every Christmas, between Christmas night and the Feast of the Holy Innocents on the 28th. This was started by the Catholic worker before I joined. And we only drank water, and we sat on the footpath night and day with signs. So, of course, by the third day, people would be aware of your presence, and you would be starting to get more abuse and more confrontation. And but also some really good encounters as well with people and discussions, you know. We had good discussions with each other and other people who joined the vigil. So, but one day, because I'm also work as a therapist now, and I'm really aware that having this sort of public vigil will trigger people. And so one day I just felt tired of it, and I thought, okay, God, I'm just upsetting people here. I'm not achieving anything. I've kind of had enough. And I think I'll have to think about another way of acting. You know, this isn't working. I was feeling a bit despairing, I guess. But I'm sharing this. This is an intimate experience, but I'm sharing it for some reason now. I wasn't planning to. But I turned around and looked at the clinic, and I could see the roof of the clinic, and then there's bushes in front of it. And as I looked, it was like space opened up, and I had a vision of all of these faces, hundreds and hundreds of faces, and they were trying to speak and they couldn't speak, and they were looking really frustrated. And I just thought, okay, I get it. Like, the people who are abusing me have got a voice, but the people who've died at this clinic don't have a voice. They only have me, and I'm their voice. And I just think the Holy Spirit kind of came through with me at that moment to help me through that time of questioning and despairing, to have that vision at that moment. And ever since then, I haven't doubted a public witness is important, to what's happening in the abortion situation. So I hope that explains things for people. I'm very happy to have ongoing discussions about this. I would love to be talked out of doing abortion clinic actions. So feel free. So I think I've made some notes to try and make sure I cover everything I think is important to cover. I do feel very saddened that women encourage other women to have abortions. I think we should be actually encouraging women to say, we'll support you having your babies. I think that's how women should pull together and support each other. And I think taking your friends to an abortion clinic isn't the way to help. Or your sister or your niece. You know, I've met all of these people at clinics as they've been going in, thinking that they're doing the right thing, helping these young women often get past the blockade or get into the clinic instead of, and you know, they're obviously, I've been involved in crisis pregnancy counselling and offering hospitality to single mums, and of course as Catholic workers we do these things too, and that's an important thing that we offer. But yeah, I just encourage everyone to speak out against this crime against humanity, and against women, that I believe it is. Thank you.